been quite controversial.
Quite active on the Instagram.
I've been starting several large scale debates that, people just, so this is, obviously eventually I'll grow up and I'll stop doing this. Eventually, a troll believes they've won because the average person just says, "F it, I'm done."
Mm-hmm.
Me, no. I'll comment them till their little diabetic fingers fall off.
Excuse me.
So I've had a couple meteoric sized shows. They're not actually that big.
I don't know if I turned it down or turned it up.
What are you doing?
I don't know.
I think you turned it down. I think we both turned ours down.
Hello?
Don't
How about that? How about that?
Don't put it in your mouth.
That's good. I just yelled, just to make sure. What do you...
There you go. Okay.
Are we good? Mm-hmm. Are we live?
Johnson?
We'll do it live!
Okay. We'll do it live!
You're acting like real Riley. Like, you was off. I love that so much.
Oh, man. Okay. So, I think we've got this down. We'll start in prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I wanted to start with that prayer because it's judgment.
Judgment.
It's a judgment prayer. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. Mm-hmm. So you're making two different judgments in that.
You're judging your own state as a sinner,
as well as
somebody else who has sinned against you.
Mm-hmm.
But only Jesus can judge me.
Hashtag judge not lest ye be judged. What?
I've got a feeling we may lose a few more followers after this one.
That's okay.
Because the truth, what's more important, popularity or the truth?
Popularity, 100%.
100? Oh, sorry. I guess we're done here.
We're done. You're wrong. I'm right.
We're done here. Women ordination, gay marriage in the priest or in the church, in the basilicas.
That's not popular with men, and I only care about men. I don't care about women's opinions.
Oh, that's right. Because we're
obviously because we're Catholic.
Yeah.
And misogynists.
And we don't like women.
Because of the patriarchy.
Yeah, we don't like women, but we worship the Virgin Mary.
That's right. We do worship the Virgin Mary. I forgot about that. Dang it.
It's so confusing. It's
okay.
Really difficult being Catholic.
Yeah, tomorrow when we attend service and we all gather around holding hands and the grape juice comes around and we have this communal symbolism around at the time she was a virgin, but obviously she didn't stay that way because Jesus has brothers and sisters.
Of course not.
Anyway, so
what a mouthful.
What a mouthful. That's what he said.
What are we talking about today?
We're talking about judgment. And not like the two judgments that you get, right? Your particular judgment.
And then the final.
And then the final. Is it final judgment?
Yeah, it's particular and then final.
Is it called final? Excuse me. Is it called final judgment? I thought it had a cooler name.
The final. Particular.
Way to go.
Particular and then the final.
Yeah, your particular.
Yeah, and then there's the final.
Yeah. They could have come up with a better
On
name.
Judgment Day, when Jesus will come down and judge all of the soccer moms with the bumper stickers.
That say coexist.
Only Jesus can judge me, or he's about to.
He's about to. Well, he's already judged her.
And he He may
because
find
the
some
second
of us
judgment
wanting.
is not for the direction of souls, but humanity en masse as a whole.
Yeah.
And Jesus is going to grab the mic,
You've all been.
drop mic like Chris Rock. I'm out.
You all could not live up to what I asked.
Yeah. You didn't worship my mom.
I was explicit about that.
I even saved her body, and you didn't get it. So yeah, okay. So we're talking about judgment, and the reason we're talking about judgment is because, as you know, I'm a slightly argumentative type of person.
An unapologetic troll.
I'm not an unapologetic troll. I am the knight who marches over the bridge that trolls live under, and when they come out hobbling after me because they're all fat, I beat them up
You made it sound so noble.
until the very end.
Until the very end.
Yeah, no, I like to just kind of smash trolls in the face a little bit for two reasons. One, I hate keyboard warriors, and I really like to. Inevitably, the way that it works is they have a on the face, slightly. Sometimes they have an on the face argument that can be perceived as to being correct, but you scratch it even the slightest and it all falls apart. And then eventually what happens about 5 or 10 responses back, they end up just flat out doing to you what they're claiming you've already done.
Which typically comes in the form of character assassination.
Yeah, so like the first one,
Well, you're just too stupid to understand what I'm saying.
so my favorite is I've been getting called a boomer a lot lately.
A boomer.
Boomer.
Like a baby boomer?
Yeah,
But you're a millennial.
I am. But it's an insult. It started as a generational insult, right? Like
Okay.
boomers are old and stupid.
You know better than I do because I don't
I
spend
had
a
to
lot
ask
of time on the internet.
I had to ask people about this because
Yeah.
I like when people call me a boomer, I'm like, thanks. I'm of retirement age and I have significantly more saved wealth than the vast majority of millennials. Like I don't get this. No, boomer's an insult because it's kind of like it's like calling somebody a troglodyte, but in internet language.
Okay.
Right? They're stupid and they're so uptight and ignorant that
And they imagine that when you're typing your response back, you're pecking.
you're pecking like one at a time, and then you got to like do this when you read the menu. Yeah, and they're like you're the reason that everything's wrong,
Okay.
right? Like you screwed everything up. Anyway, so I get called boomer quite a bit, but in these last two, the first one they were saying that I couldn't judge behavior, and that eventually they made the claim that I couldn't say people were Catholic or not because I used the quotes, the air quotes when people claim to be Catholic but live a life that's entirely void of Catholic teaching. They called me out for that, and then at the end of it they go, well, you're not a Catholic, and you're like, did you not hear anything that I've been saying? Like thank you for doing to me what you just said I couldn't do, right? And then the last one was they said that I couldn't, that I wasn't a real Catholic, and God forbid anybody lets me teach any single thing about the Catholic Church ever to anybody.
Joke's on them, you already have.
Joke's on them. Ba-bam! Which is either insightful as to how we pick our instructors for CCD, or it's highly disappointing. I'll let them decide. Patriarchy.
Interesting.
Anyway,
So we're talking about judgment today.
Yeah. And not judgment, again, particular individual, final, semicolon, pause. And what?
Particular.
No, what's the thing in the middle of a play?
Intermission.
Intermission. I almost said interlude.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the same thing as well.
Anyway, so we're talking about judging people and their actions.
Yep.
And in our ability and almost our duty and responsibility as Catholics to call each other out when we're being gigantic pieces of
Yeah.
and not just our fellow Catholics, but
Other individuals as well.
other people, right? So yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. So Welcome to Catholic Guardians.
An unapologetically masculine podcast for Catholic men.
By Catholic men.
Together, we will judge the
On our return to tradition. As we ride the tradition train back, we're going to point out the window.
Bad you. Bad you. Yeah. It's the judgment car on the tradition train.
That's good.
We both did the same thing at the same time.
And I'm drinking water.
That's not water.
It's basically water.
It's got water in it.
It's got juice in it.
So does my...
It has electrolytes.
My beer. My beer. This is a very local... This is a local brew.
Mm-hmm.
From Tahoe.
Yeah. It smells good.
It's very yummy.
Not hopefully, in 1 week.
Peace
But
out.
yeah, no. In less than a week, I will have an alcoholic beverage again. And we've already started to talk about what is it going to be. And she wants a margarita. She wants to go to a hole-in-the-wall Mexican restaurant and get like a really good salty margarita. And I want a six-pack.
So this is my favorite thing, right? Hole-in-the-wall taco places, Mexican restaurants, have great food, but drinks.
I don't know. I'm not a fan of margaritas anyway, so I typically don't get them. I don't judge the restaurants based on their margaritas. I do judge them based on their tacos, but that is accurate.
Yeah, like because like they're so hole in the wall that they don't even make their drink. They just take like the Jose Cuervo juice and the Jose Cuervo tequila, and they go like this, and then they take the salt shaker and then they go like that with it.
I will say the one margarita that I had that I was absolutely floored by was at Downtown Disney at their Mexican restaurant. It was a blood orange margarita. It was amazing. But I'm going to get a 6-pack of Newcastle and a bottle of Japanese whiskey.
I can't believe you drink Newcastle.
Newcastle. It's so good.
I have so many nights that I don't want to remember
Yeah.
because of that beer. Anyway, so let's talk about judgment. Okay?
Are you judging my taste in beer?
Yeah, your lack of taste in beer.
How dare you? It's better than when I was 18 and I used to buy a 36-pack of Rolling Rock.
No. Do you remember Jake used to drink Steel Reserve? That's Arab beer because they just let the goat pee in the bottle and then they just screw the top on and they ship it out.
It's so bad.
Okay. So, what are we not allowed to do when it comes to the judgment of another individual?
I am not allowed to judge somebody's eternal soul.
In as much as...
Whether or not they're in heaven or in hell.
No. Hell.
Sorry, whether or not they're in hell.
Yeah,
because obviously we make that judgment for the saints.
For the saints, yeah.
Yeah, so foot,
right.
Open mouth, insert foot. But so we can't judge somebody's state of eternal
damnation.
Damnation, exactly.
Yeah. But we could, can, should, would, shalt, thine.
Should.
Shouldn't. Should. Shouldn't. Shouldn't.
Should not.
I ain't got no judgment. Yeah, so we can judge behavior. We should judge behavior. Again, we do it every day.
And that's the thing that just really irritates me the most, because just by the base level of engaging or choosing not to engage in one behavior or activity, you've made a judgment.
Yeah. And especially when it comes to like people who say, you can't judge me or you can't judge that. You've made a judgment yourself that what that person's doing is incorrect.
Yes.
Is immoral behavior, right? So I want to start with, why do people say that? And I think there's two big reasons. The first big reason is they're wholly and completely, and this is not an insult to them, but it is a judgment, that they're just ignorant of not only the scripture and the real meaning of Christ, but of the church's teachings on judging behavior, right? Because the church judges behavior all the time.
They actually have a fairly thick book about behavior.
It's about this
and judgments therein.
This book only gets wider thanks to our popes who like to add things into it.
But to your point, this book is all judgment based on good and evil or moral or immoral behavior.
Yes.
So it is a judgment call of what are actions are good and what actions are bad.
Yeah. So the first comes from ignorance, right? People just don't know what this is. It's the Catechism. People don't know.
I bet most of you Catholics out there have not seen this before.
Probably not. They didn't even know it was a book that you could buy. They'd be like, yeah, that's bigger than the Bible.
What, did you get that directly from the Pope? I thought only Uncle Teddy had a copy.
No, we didn't get it from the Pope because he's too busy like redlining out parts of the Catechism. His looks like every kid in college who's cramming for an exam with like the 1,000 little posty thumb notes, writing in the margins. And then he's like Martin Luther.
And then Father Martin's doing the same thing with Scripture. Oh, I don't like that one. Oh, I really don't like that one.
James Martin or Martin Luther?
Father James Martin.
And Martin Luther, both of them.
And Martin Luther, yeah. Well,
yeah, Martin Luther was like, I don't like this thing about Mary.
Well, I don't
James
like this.
Martin's like, I don't like this thing about not putting it in the butt.
Martin Luther was like, I just really don't like this book.
Okay, so the second part then comes down to, and I think this is really at the heart of the entire non-judgmental movement, is people are so relative that what they do is in essence this camouflaged movement, right? Where they say you can't judge this XYZ behavior. And it almost seems like they're putting money into this checking account of non-judgmentalism. I'm going to tell you that you can't judge those types of behaviors because I hope eventually when you find out the crappy things that I'm doing, you'll remember my words and not judge me back. So there's this fear of embarrassment, this acknowledgement that you're probably doing things that you shouldn't be doing, and you're hoping that it's all relative. And when you say don't judge, you're just trying to create a larger relativistic movement where there's not a real wrong, it's just kind of relative. It's my opinion. You know, I love, again, going back to a couple conversations ago about abortion. Abortion's wrong for me. Abortion isn't what I choose for myself or my kids. But for you, it's totally fine. It's that relative and not ambiguous because it's very specific. It's that relativistic, immoral, subjective behavior. Right?
It's the idea of allowing the live and let live to infiltrate every single aspect of your life. And
Infiltration.
It's something that we talked about last week on the podcast when we were talking about how to form a political ideology. And the political ideology should conform to your religious identity and not the other way around.
Exactly.
And the don't judge, to me, speaks to they already have that live and let live mentality, both socially and politically, and so now they're trying to conform their religious ideology to that political opinion.
Yes.
Instead of doing it the correct way.
I've already established what my quote-unquote, my personal subjective moral code is, and now I'm going to impose that on everybody else in this passive-aggressive, relative, don't judge because you can't. Christ even says don't judge. And there's a couple scriptures that on their face seem to be don't judge, right? Christ says, judge not lest ye be judged.
Excuse me.
He who is without sin may cast the first stone. But then there's also scriptures, it explicitly says, speak up and judge each other.
I mean, Christ said, why do you ignore the plank in your own eye and point out the speck in your brother's? Like, you have to, just from the base level, to say live and let live, you're already making that subjective value judgment, and now you're judging somebody else's ideology that does not conform to your own, and now you're saying, well, you should fall in line with mine because I've judged that you're like, it's philosophically inconsistent.
It is. It's a logical fallacy.
To try to say, don't be judgmental, you're already judging.
You're judging. You're saying that what they're doing is incorrect based off of your personal moral compass. Which is really not a moral compass. It's like a moral circle because it just goes around and around and around.
It's a snake eating its own tail.
That's such a creepy thing. Could you imagine that? I mean, little babies do that and they get so mad. I love kids when they're so hungry that they chew on their own finger.
or what, or they're like they just grab a handful of food, like my youngest did yesterday. Just grabbed a handful of food, shoved her whole hand in her mouth, and then bit down, and then got upset because she bit her hand.
I love it when they have the food in their hand, right? Like they get a clump of like cereal and they put it in their mouth and they can't open their hand to release the cereal, and so they're like. And so they like drool for a minute, and then they open their hand as they pull it out, and none of the cereal makes it into the mouth until it comes down. And then I sit there doing what every good adult should do. I judge them. That's a poor habit of eating. That's not a good way to do it.
But then they look at you and maintain eye contact as they try to do it again.
And they're like, why doesn't this work? And you're like, here, let me feed you. And then they're like, huh.
One at a time, but I don't want one. I've judged that I want 3.
Okay, so let's talk about judging, right? Okay. So why is it important that why should we judge behavior to begin with? Like, why is it important? Like, aside from the fact, like, let's just, for the sake of argument, say that judging people is okay. Mm-hmm. It's a moral good. It's totally fine. Why should we judge other people's behavior?
Well, I mean, I would say that there are 2 reasons why. First and foremost, you need to be able to say what is right and what is wrong. You need to be able to differentiate what is moral and what is immoral behavior.
Okay.
So that would be primarily the reason. And then I would say judgment secondarily is good because as a society or as a culture, and for us as Catholics as a religion, we should use that judgment to help enforce the good and the moral behavior. And calling people out who deviate from that, mm-hmm. not in a violent way, but in a stern, hey, did you know that this is wrong and you are a bad person as a result? It helps to enforce. Like we've wholly gotten away from shame as a society.
Let's bring shame back.
Shame is a phenomenal motivator.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a great book by Radley Balko, The Rise of the Warrior Cop, and he talks about in some of the first chapters the role that shame played in effectively a private market of crime control, mm-hmm. because families, if they knew that like their son was engaging in deviant behavior,
they'd come down on
they would come down on the son,
yeah.
because, oh, well, I'm going to make restitution to my neighbor, and then I'm going to beat the out of my son because he has brought shame upon this family.
It's like single motherhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we removed the shame of single motherhood, look what happened to single mothers. They exponentially skyrocketed, mm-hmm. right? And you know,
and you're not just single motherhood on the mothers, but when we remove the shame of a man fleeing
and his duties as a
acting
man.
As a coward,
yeah.
from being a father to that child,
yeah. And once you remove the shame, then there's no reason to not do it, mm-hmm. right? Because we all adhere to some level of behavior based off of shame, mm-hmm. right? And there are certain things that we will not do because we're afraid of being shamed, right? Now, it seems the conservative side of the political ideology shame traditional values. Now, they shame the anti-traditional values. Single motherhood, abdicating your role as a family man, mm-hmm. Being a deadbeat to society, being a drain on the public system. We shame that kind of behavior. On the left, they shame not doing that. Mm-hmm. How dare you be a woman who gets married and then loses her virginity and has children? How dare you?
Yeah, I thought feminism was about a woman's right to choose.
Yeah, you choose choose to be a bad person.
And empowering women when they make that choice that's best for them. Quote unquote best for them.
So there's no problem in judging. What happens mm-hmm. is, back to my point, because it's all about me, is we shame people or we judge them in a way to avoid us being judged because we know what we're doing is naturally wrong, mm-hmm. right? Like, I had an abortion, so I'm going to shame you for judging that abortion is bad because I'm trying to avoid the topic and then admitting to myself that what I did was actually wrong. Mm-hmm. Or I fornicated, and so I judge people who call out fornicators or adulterers. because I did those things and I don't want to be embarrassed and shamed by my own actions. So I go out of my way to say, don't do that.
Just
right?
as brief as that, I think that's one of the more frustrating ones when people that engage in premarital sexual behavior judge and try to shame those who don't, as in like, oh, you're missing out. Why would you waste the best years of your life?
Yeah.
Like that. Like,
I love that. I love the
it's so frustrating.
My favorite is when people who have like 1 or 2 kids hear that you have like 4 and they go, don't you know that you can just,
there's a procedure for that now.
and you're like, yeah, I know, but
yeah, I know, but
I have my entire
my entire identity as a man is wrapped up in my ability to procreate.
That's right. Yeah.
No, what I tell him is, well, I don't have a TV in my room for a reason, because I don't like watching TV as much as the other thing.
I like making TV. I don't know what that.
Yeah. But so going back to my original point, I would say judgment is necessary for the 2 reasons of you need to be able to differentiate moral and immoral behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And as a society with shared values, you need to have some mechanism to help enforce people to make the right decisions as opposed to the wrong ones.
And I think the third point, it's very in line with what you're saying, is safe and unsafe behavior.
Yeah, that would
right?
be on it too.
Like, I think, so we need to talk safety on 2 different levels, right? There's a physical safety, and you can judge behavior on a physical level. Like, I think you driving drunk not only makes you a piece of shit because you endanger other people, but because you're endangering your own safety, right? And then we talk about don't be a fornicator or an adulterer or an idolater, because that endangers your soul.
Your immortal soul.
Immortal soul.
So when you talk about safety, there's the physical safety, and then there is the eternal safety.
Yeah, so like I'm worried about your safety, right? I'm worried about your life, right? So I judge behavior and I say, this is dangerous, this is not dangerous. Maybe you should do less of this and more of the other thing.
But
right?
it's really kind of funny too, because I mean, there probably are some instances, but I think you would be hard pressed to find something that is not only physically dangerous, that is also not spiritually dangerous as well.
Yeah, I think you'd be very hard pressed to find an instance that something is spiritually good but not physically good, or something that is spiritually bad but not physically bad.
Yeah,
I think they go hand in hand because again, God isn't a moron and he made everything work out naturally. Like being a lazy, slothful, gluttonous piece of shit is unhealthy physically and spiritually. Being a pious, abstaining, chaste person is
charitable person
is good physically,
yes,
and spiritually.
Yeah,
right. So this is what I love though, because people who don't like your judgment, it usually is portrayed like this. You make a judgment claim of somebody else's behavior, and then they go, but insert biblical verse here, or summary of biblical verse here, and it's usually just cherry-picked, not in context. And then they ignore, and they do it in public, they ignore all of the other instances in the Bible where it says when you have a problem with a brother, you bring it to them.
You go to him
in private.
Yeah. And then if he doesn't listen, then you bring a friend. And then if he still doesn't listen, then you get the whole community.
Then you go to the church, right?
Yeah.
But in order for you to have a problem with a brother, you'd have to make a judgment. So we have rules in the Bible that are explicitly not encouraging, but there is an understanding, a logical understanding that human beings given a brain, like an intelligence, like humans are intelligent, a God-given gift. Intelligence is not a natural evolution. It's a gift from God, right? This human intelligence that we have. You can't say that God gave you the intelligence to understand morality, and then he would be like, but I don't want you to think about that and portray that morality or overlay it over other people's actions.
I don't want you to judge your brother who is going out and fornicating or gambling,
yes,
or engaging in acts of unwarranted violence. Don't do that, because that's not wrong.
I want you to use your intelligence, and then what I want you to do Like a good Catholic is, I want you to bottle it all up, keep it really tight inside,
and don't share it with anybody else,
and keep it to yourself. It's like we talked about this a long time ago. One of the biggest frustrations I have is people. Again, it's this relative thing. Mm-hmm. I believe in God, but I'm not going to impose that
on my children.
Oh, so you want to go to heaven, but your kids.
Couldn't get them baptized soon enough,
right? Like that's exactly what you're saying. You're like, so I was having this abortion conversation the other day with a really good friend of mine, mm-hmm. and I was like, I don't ever foresee an instance where abortion is justifiable, ever. Rape, incest, none of it. Never see it. Life of the mother is not abortion because, again, the primary goal is to save the mother, not to end the pregnancy. Abortion is always...
Abortion is the direct, targeted termination of the child's life.
So
trying to remove an implanted embryo so that a mother could receive radiation treatment for breast cancer.
Or like the chemo risks the child. Anyway, yes. So I don't want to admit, this isn't about abortion.
That's another
so I was talking to him about that, and I was like, I just couldn't ever see it. And he goes, he goes, I don't think the convenience factor is an appropriate excuse for abortion.
And that's the one too. Well,
but then
if you make a bad decision, you should live with the bad decision.
But then they said something, and you popped into my head. They said, but if the baby's gonna have, XYZ disability or disorder, and they're gonna live a life of pain and suffering, then I think that's okay. And I was like, don't you know anybody who's got autism or Downs? Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, would you ever go to their parent and be like, you should have killed your kid? And he was like, no. And I was like, but that's what you're saying. Not for your kid, but that kid shouldn't be alive. Mm-hmm. Because their life, regardless of the suffering, is just not worth it.
Sorry. You just made a judgment on whether that child's life is going to be of any value or not. And you judged it based on their productivity versus their consumption.
Yeah. And again, like they weren't making the argument for judgment, but they were just making a relative argument. Mm-hmm. And that's what this comes down to. It's not about judging. It's about this moral relativism, right? You shouldn't tell me about the splinter in my eye because of the log in yours. I've always perceived that scripture not to be about not telling your brother that he's got a splinter in his eye, but making sure that you don't ever get the log in yours. I've always seen it as it's like a two-part warning. One, don't be a hypocrite. Mm-hmm. Right? Yep. Like if I masturbate and view porn, I can't get on these platforms and be like, hey, don't masturbate and don't view porn. Mm-hmm. People might never know.
You might be a private sinner in that regard.
But it's still hypocrisy, and it might do a small bit of good, but overall it does more damage to my soul, and that's a concern of God's, right?
And that's something that you will have to answer for.
The second thing is it's this... It's like making sure your house is always clean as opposed to cleaning it up the minute family's coming over. Mm-hmm. I'm going to live in squalor until I know I have to be clean, and then I'm going to try to clean it all up. Instead of letting your house get in such disarray that you have to make this big grandiose movement to clean your house before friends come over, just keep your house clean all the time. It's about... It's not saying don't tell your friend, like, hey, what I think you're doing is wrong, but you are wrong. It's like, hey, live a life that is always geared towards the good so that when you are confronted with bad, you can make that judgment against your brother.
Yeah, you can.
Like, it's not saying don't judge. It's saying, hey, live a good life so that when you see the bad, you can call it out because we're all trying to come together as a community. This Christian community that we live in is not a Christian community of individuals. We are a community together, right? Mm-hmm. And in order for us to be able to correct each other, we can't all be hypocrites. So make sure that you don't have a log in your eye before you're like, hey, you've got a splinter, mm-hmm. right?
And I think this is a perfect segue into the first time I'm going to quote the Catechism in this episode, because effectively the Catechism in this passage is effectively telling us that we do need to make judgment, because making judgments in the right way is going to protect your own soul by making you not an accessory to somebody else's sin. So this is chapter 1868. Sin is a personal act. So first and foremost, somebody's sin is their sin of themselves. So somebody engaging in fornication is their sin. Moreover, we have a responsibility for the sins committed by others when we cooperate in them. So my sin might not be fornication as somebody else's sin is, but I may still be engaging in sinful behavior, to quote the Catechism, by participating directly and voluntarily in them, by ordering, advising, praising, or approving them, maybe live and let live, by not disclosing or not hindering them when we have an obligation to do so. So somebody says, hey, I'm going to go cheat on my wife, or I'm going to drain all of my savings, I'm going to put a second mortgage on my house, and I'm going to take the money and I'm going to go to Atlantic City, and I go, put it all on black. And then finally, by protecting evildoers, then when somebody else calls out that person, hey, that was a really stupid decision of you to take all of your money and go to Atlantic City. Well, hey, you don't know the things that they've been through. You don't know.
You don't know what their life is like.
Yeah,
you don't know what their life has been like.
How dare you judge them? So right there, the Catechism is saying that it is important for us to make judgments of those kinds in order to not only try to protect the soul of the person that we're in contact with, but then in order to protect our own soul so that we don't become an accessory to somebody else's sin.
I'm gonna find this.
Excuse me.
This verse, because it was such an important one.
More while you're looking for that. Moreover, I would say one of the things that I think gets so overlooked with the scripture of the adulterer at the well, or the adulteress at the well, when Christ says, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." I think the warning that Christ is trying to give us, moreover, is don't allow somebody else's sin draw you yourself into a state of sin yourself. So just because somebody else is sinning does not give you warrant to sin yourself in order to persecute or to punish them. St. Thomas in the Summa, going back to the episode that really kind of started this path that we're on right now, in the Summa, with regards to distributing the Eucharist to somebody in an open state of mortal sin, St. Thomas writes that nobody should engage in a mortal sin to prevent somebody else from engaging in mortal sin. So if somebody's going to actively kill somebody, you should not go kill that person first to prevent your buddy or your brother from killing that person and then entering that state of mortal sin. But I think it also works in the reverse.
Here it is.
So somebody in a state of mortal sin, you should not allow that to then draw you into that state of sin by your persecution of them.
And so we talk about the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Christ was calling them out for being hypocrites, and this disgust that they had of sin in other people, which it's this hatred, not of the sin, because I'm not a big fan of it. Hate the sin, but not the sinner. But we should despise sin in all forms, but not the people, because again, we're all broken people, and we fall into sin. But that doesn't mean that we relative that out and say, well, we're all sinners, so it's okay to stumble every once in a while. It doesn't work. But here's the scripture. It's Proverbs 31:9. Open your mouth and judge righteously. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. Right? You don't get more explicit than open your mouth and judge righteously. It's that righteous judgment that we're seeking to become, that we're seeking to have. I don't want to judge you incorrectly, because I'm afraid of shame. I'm afraid of being proven wrong. So what I'll do is, when I feel like something is wrong, I'll research that, and I'll be like, is this wrong? Is this right? And if it's right, then I won't say anything. But if it's wrong, I'll speak out against it. And now I'm not doing it from this ignorant and disgusted state. I'm doing it from a place of love. I want my brothers and sisters to go to heaven. And when I judge a behavior, I'm saying, hey, that behavior is not going to lead you to heaven. It says it in the Bible. It says it in the Catechism, the magisterium of the church. What you're doing, God despises. You should stop doing that for your own safety. We talked about this before the podcast started. The reason we call them mortal sins is not because it's a really cool name, but because traditionally speaking, it caused death. Either in the Old Testament, it was like you'd get killed for it.
Like literally you would get smoked. You would be smoten.
By the state, not by God.
Well, sometimes by God too. I mean, if like right after in Leviticus, God hands down all of the decrees for the priests. Two of Aaron's sons go against it, and God kills them right then.
But it kills your soul, right? And it's a mortal injury to your eternal soul, and we're trying to prevent that. And in order for you to do that, you have to make judgments.
Yeah.
So you should and again, like I'm going to take from Jordan Peterson. First thing you should do is clean your room.
Yeah.
Right? Like clean your own house before you go out and start trying to clean up the world.
Which is exactly what the Pharisees were not doing.
They weren't, because they were living in sin.
Yes.
Like just up to the nose with it. Because if we were to say that until if you were to take the verse of Christ at the well and really apply it in a exact literal sense, I can think of maybe 3 people on earth who could have ever cast a stone, aside from Christ.
Mary,
Saint Therese, right? And maybe, I don't know, maybe one other, maybe a saint that I'm unaware of who's never committed a sin ever. There is almost nobody who has not committed a sin. But if you were to live in a world that was completely devoid of any and all judgment, we'd live in chaos. Everything would be okay. You couldn't say it's wrong to murder, it's wrong to rape, it's wrong to steal, it's wrong to cheat, it's wrong to adultery.
Or what you would say is, well, it's not right for me. I would never choose murder for me, but if somebody else chooses murder...
Well, if you lived in a world that had no judgment, you wouldn't even say that. Because there would be no concept of right and wrong.
There's effectively no moral good or moral evil, so there's not even a sense of okay. There just is.
It would be behavior that you did or behavior that you didn't do. And that would be it. And we have these things not because we hate people, but because we love them. Again, Christ at the well, what does Christ say when the woman leaves?
Sin no more.
Go out and sin no more, right? Go out, and these things that you were doing, bad. Don't do them again. That's a judgment, right? And Christ is calling us to be better than what was going on at the time. Christ was speaking out, and so much of the Bible is so contextual, not only to Scripture, but to the environment that it was in. The Jews, the people that Christ was speaking to, were living in a corrupted religious institution.
That was more concerned with the state of their...
perceived piety.
That was more concerned with their political power, their seat of political power, than it was with the salvation of those people around them.
Yeah.
They were more concerned with the mercy from Caesar and from his I can't even remember the word now. Are you going to sneeze? Oh, wait. Oh man, that hurt me that you just held it in like that.
That felt so good.
Oh,
I can't let it out.
Oh, that hurt my heart.
It hurts me to sneeze out.
But so they were more concerned with their standing with the political and the earthly authorities at the time than they were with God.
Yeah.
And the spiritual authority.
And we have it all the way up to the crucifixion of Christ. Past that too.
Yeah, like in the gospel of John, when the head priest tears his garments, we have no king but Caesar. We have no king but Caesar. Like, that's a little idolatrous.
He hadn't met Mary yet.
Oh, he didn't know who to worship.
Yeah,
properly.
But like when Christ and Pius are talking, Pius just wants the truth, and then Christ gives it to him, and Pius is like, I don't want it. But I'm not going to judge you. I'm going to wash my hands of this and give you back to the Jews who are going to kill you.
Well, because I mean that's a perfect example, because what does he say? I have found no wrong. So I'll rough him up a little bit, but then I'll release him back to you. But I have found no wrong.
And the reason he did it was relative. He was more concerned with his station in power the uppity Jews that kept uprising and getting him in trouble in his political power.
Because that's something that you don't get really in the context of the Bible reading it, and you don't really have the historical context anymore. Like every 20 years or so,
there was another
Messiah who led a political revolt against the Roman Empire.
And so like again, like that's why there was such an uprising against Christ by the Jews, was not only their perceived religious insult, but they were worried about their not temporal. Their
no, I think temporal is
yeah, it's of this world.
Yeah,
right?
temporal.
They were worried about temporal punishment. They were worried about the Romans cracking down on them. Mm-hmm. The Pharisees were worried about losing the power that they had over the Jews. But Pilate was like, I'm going to wash my hands and I'm going to give him, he's your problem.
Yeah.
I find no guilt in him. It's up to you to do that. That would be like, I wouldn't kill you and rape you, but if he does it, I mean, that's his choice.
Yeah.
Like that's
his body, his choice.
And it is his body, his choice.
Your body, his choice. Sorry.
But it doesn't make any sense, right? Like, if it's okay for you to abort your child, why isn't it okay for me to abort your child? It's all relative. Mm-hmm. It's so relative, and people just lose sight of it. And they don't want to. And again, going back to like one of the very first things that we were talking about, the reason that they don't want to do it is, I would assume, I'm going to make a judgment call, that it's because they're living in a state of sin that they either don't have the discipline to overcome or the desire to overcome.
And when, discipline or desire, and when they hear somebody else making a judgment based on the way that they live their life, because we all have the truth written on our hearts, they don't like hearing it.
They don't want to hear it.
Because now they have to try to conform their worldly ideologies with something that is eternal. And they don't want to do it. They don't want to have to.
Yeah,
they don't want to have to give up the comforts.
I want to be able to have
comforts.
As many orgasms as I want with whomever, however, wherever I'd like. And when you come at me and say that I can't do that,
not even can't, but you should not.
You shouldn't, right? And when when you say that, I'm like, how dare you say that? I like it too much. It really becomes this unbelievably selfish relative movement. Mm-hmm. So then the second thing is, what can we do? Right? Because some people get really caught up in the grammarology of this, mm-hmm. right? Like you and I were talking. I can't call you evil. I can just say that you're an evildoer. Mm-hmm. And my response was, like, I can say you're an adulterer, or you're somebody who commits adultery, but you're not an adulterer. But when we say these things, so like again, like I called out JFK, right? I said JFK was a piece of he cheated on his wife. He abused people, specifically women. He abused drugs. He sacrificed callously American lives in the Cold War. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, he lied. He had this pious outward view. I'm a Catholic. But then was not living up to those things. So I called him out.
You judged him.
I judged him.
How dare you?
How dare I? And people were like, you can't say that about him. I don't understand what the difference is in between saying somebody who... So, I mean, well, let's just use a really good example. Hitler. I hate Hitler examples because they're just so distasteful. That's a judgment call.
Then let's go with Stalin.
No, but I like Hitler because it's well known. Not a lot of people know the whole bit about Stalin.
Which is so crazy because his body count doubles.
Way higher.
At least doubles.
Higher. I mean, like Hitler
Conservative estimates are double than Hitler's.
Was like a C on the genocide scale. Stalin was like an A.
And like you even talk about Mao.
He was
Honorable Chairman Mao.
Yeah, what a way for the fucking Asians to throw off the grading curve. I don't know if I'm going to edit that out or not.
You probably should.
I probably should.
You probably should edit that
because I'll be a patriarchal, racist,
cisgendered, white racist alt-right
But-
male.
That's like saying Hitler just made bad choices. But Hitler didn't just make bad choices. He did wholly incorrect, evil, despicable actions. But he viewed them as good. And he loved what he was doing. I don't see how you can see somebody who loves doing evil and not say they're evil.
And I think what it comes down to, as we were talking about it, people make the judgment that when you say somebody is evil, you are saying they are evil eternally without redemption.
Yeah.
Because what is sin if not evil? Because sin is actively working against God.
Yes.
God is all good, all love, all mercy.
All the time.
All the time. 100% of the time, he is every time.
I don't know if God is more than 100% of the time.
He's 100% of the time, he's outside of time.
So is that like 90? Is that more? It's like
He's out. I don't know. I can't
all
explain.
of the time he's out of time.
I can't,
Does that mean he's
yeah.
always late? Because he's always out of time?
But I love talking about the timeless. I love talking about how God
Timeless.
the timelessness of God and outside of the space. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. But so the idea of when you say somebody is evil, the assumption is you are making that eternal judgment that person is always evil, has always been evil, will always be evil, and is beyond redemption. And I think we need to look at that state of evil. You're not saying that is a permanent state of being for them, but when they are actively engaging in sin, their state of being is evil.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, let's...
Because to your point, nobody wants to do that introspection and point the finger back at themselves, because all sin, granted some sins hold more moral weight than others.
Yes.
But all sin is evil.
Yes.
And people don't want to say that I am evil because I sin, or because of my nature, because of my fallen nature, I can be evil.
It's what we say distasteful language, right? There was a priest who I have a good deal of respect for, said that the biggest mistake the Catholic Church has made was its mistranslation in the Catechism of homosexuality, is that it's disordered. And he said, like, the word disorder just has such a bad connotation to it, and it's not exactly what was written in whatever language we translated it into English from.
From Greek into...
No, because it's
whatever.
in the Catechism. They're talking about the translation of the Catechism,
Gotcha.
right? But it's like, why are we pussyfooting around terminology? It's really so insulting, right? So I'll use the Protestant example. Protestants love to judge Catholics. You're going to hell because you worship Mary. So what they're doing is they're making a judgment of an action and of the heart. They're saying your action is bad because you're worshiping Mary. That act is wrong. But then they're making a judgment on what you actually hold to be true in your heart, which is a double judgment. Judgment squared.
Which is, the second judgment is what we are cautioned against. The action. Because we do, again, like, not to beat this idea to death, but you have to make judgments based on actions of others
and behavior, and you can judge
behaviors,
someone's
yes.
character based off of a collection of their actions.
Yes,
right?
but to judge their eternal state of being and the direction of their immortal soul, that's the thing that we can't.
Like, I think Hitler was a giant evil piece of crap. I don't know if he's in hell. I have no idea. There is a chance that he could have made a perfect act of contrition at the time of his death and been accepted into God's loving arms and be in heaven. He could be. He could also, most likely, probably, erring on the side of judgment here, he's probably in hell.
But we don't know.
And I'm not going to say he's in hell. I'm saying there's a good chance, given all of his actions in view overlaid with good and bad of the church, he's probably not. Given his obstinate public sin.
Sin.
But I'm not saying he's in hell. I'm not saying his soul is eternally damned, right? We only, I think there's a handful of names that we can guarantee are in hell. Lucifer. Not a person, but he's in hell. And like, there's a couple big name demons that I don't know.
Beelzebub.
Balls.
The end of the right. Ball.
I think there are a handful that we can definitively say, not people, but hell is real. We know people are in it, right? And we have, the visions at Fatima, our Holy Mother gave to the children, to the seers,
and so many other saints
of souls going into hell. We just don't know what their names are. Unfortunately, they didn't have name tags.
Yeah.
It would have been so convenient.
David.
Not the one that I'm going to bleep that out.
You should definitely
I should probably.
You should definitely bleep that one.
That was a little edgy. But
4,600.
You have one viewer.
But yeah, and when we were talking about this before the podcast, that because it doesn't sound nice, and we are so concerned with being nice and trying to work with kid gloves with so many people when it comes to the state of their immortal soul. You don't need to be uncompassionate, but you need to be direct, and you need to be able to speak the truth in a forthright manner.
Yeah.
And if you're more concerned with making it sound nice than giving them the truth, you're doing them a disservice.
Yeah, you can't. So I love the iron fist in a velvet glove. Mm-hmm. You can't be all iron fist, nor can you be all velvet glove. You have to be both. And right now, what we've done is we've gone out of our way to only ever be a velvet glove, which is really, really unfortunate because it is sending people to hell because we've made salvation so relative. People don't think about their salvation in terms of their squaring their behavior and belief system with God, so much as squaring God's words and actions with their behavior. I don't have to align myself to God to go to heaven. I square God's words, part of them, to my behavior, and I still go to heaven.
Because God and I have an understanding.
Because God and I have an arrangement, right? But it is entirely and wholly relative. I'm not as bad as they are, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not cheating on my wife. I'm just masturbating and viewing pornography. I'm not beating my wife. I'm just cussing her out in front of my children. I'm not beating my kids. I'm just never home. I don't hate. No, I don't want to say that one because I think that we've allowed this modernist, relativist, in essence, religion to replace the Catholic faith. Mm-hmm. It's all relative. We look at the Bible as not a standard bearer, not as a lighthouse. We look at it as a collection of contradictory quotations that we can use subjectively to endorse any behavior whatsoever.
After you've made a judgment on whether or not you can or cannot.
Personally, right? Like, I think I can do this, and I'm going to find a quote in the Bible that veiledly endorses my behavior. Or, if I can't, I'll just go to one of the passages that says, don't judge. Excuse me.
Yeah. Right here in the Catechism, paragraph 1865, sin creates a proclivity to sin, which means that sin will lead to more sin.
Yes.
Either by...
It's a positive feedback loop.
Either by trying to engage in a harder version of that sin to get the same thrill, or now you're engaging in lying to cover up your sin. Sin will always lead to more sin. It engenders vice by repetition of the same... Triggered! It engenders vice by repetition of the same acts. This results in perverse inclinations which cloud conscience and corrupts the concrete judgment of good and evil. Sinning takes away your ability to judge justly good and evil. So right there in the catechism is saying you need to be able to judge good and evil. However, in order to make those just judgments, you have to be in a state of grace.
Yes.
In order to do so, which
goes back to the log and the splinter.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I cannot be an obstinate sinner and then judge other people's obstinate sin. It makes no sense. Which again, the reason Christ was perfect was because Christ had to judge everybody. That's why he was holy man and holy God. Man is inherently sinful given their proclivity, or not their proclivity, given their original sin. But if Christ the man was to, as Christ, save everybody and judge everybody, Christ had to be perfect, which is why God came down and made Christ holy man and holy God. Mm-hmm. You need the perfection, the perfect nature of never sinning to be the eternal judge, right? Like
and effectively to be the standard which we all strive to orient ourselves towards. Like we all strive to live a Christ-like life because obviously Christ is the standard of what a good and moral life is. And us, by engaging in sin, fall short of that.
It's like when we look at the corrupt justice system, we don't say get rid of the justice system. We say get rid of bad judges, corrupt politicians. We're not saying get rid of the entire system. Some of us do, but that's a little bit ignorant. We just say get rid of the corrupt people. If I have a problem, I bring it to the state, to the government, to the judges, because that's what they're there to do. And
it's also one of your protected constitutional rights.
But from like a natural level, I expect them to be just. I don't expect them. I expect them to be corrupt because power corrupts. But they should not be corrupt. Given their position, if we were to like create a judge, a perfect judge, we would, in essence, what we're doing is we're creating Christ in another form, right? We want our judge to be objective, unswayed, unbiased, just, and fair. We want all of that because we know that when you hand down judgments, that's the best way to do it. And it seems unnatural to have a corrupted individual handing down judgments against others.
I think the loophole in all of this, we should just become judges. So that way when people say, you can't judge me, I'm sorry, my profession is a judge.
I'm a judge.
It is my job to judge.
You've just been judged.
And then you just stare at them.
I'm gonna pull out from Parks and Rec. You just got jammed. But really,
retro
like
jammed.
We really and that's the reason why when people who should be objective and unbiased and uncorrupt, it's so egregious when they're not that. The punishments are more severe. The outcry, the injustice of it all is heightened because of the position that they're in.
But even then, because I mean, we just keep coming back to it. How do you even determine whether or not that person is a corrupt individual unless you have a standard of moral good behavior that you're judging that person against?
Yeah, you have to.
How can you say JFK was a president unless you have good presidents with which to judge that person against? But you have a standard.
You don't even need somebody of the same class. You just need a standard. I don't need good presidents to say JFK was a bad president. JFK was a bad president because objectively he did bad things. Because killing people is wrong. Abusing people is wrong. Cheating on your wife is wrong. Abusing drugs is wrong. Lying is wrong. Regardless of what profession you're in, those are wrong things to do, and yet JFK did them. So I can say JFK is a piece of crap, right?
But you can't say
He's in hell.
he's in hell.
I could say his actions lead him closer to hell.
Had he not sought confession or made an act of contrition or any of that.
I have no claim to his last moment. When he got shot, I've got no claim as to the grace, because he did die with his rosary. I have no claim that maybe the Virgin Mary didn't come in, and at the very moment he died, she and him talked. And
he gave her the proper worship.
And obviously, because we're all idolaters. I don't know what happened. So I can't say that he's in heaven or in hell. But what I can say is that the life he was living up until the moment that he died was not a good one. If you were to weigh his good actions versus his bad actions, I would heavily weigh it on the bad side. Just as all of us do with people. We make instant judgments on people. And that's how we make friends and how we make people that we keep away, or people that we do not want to be friends with or even associated with. We make immediate judgment claims because we know what's good and what's bad, and we look at somebody and we go, that's not good. Now, what we need to do is make sure that when we make those judgments, we're using an objective standard, not a subjective standard. I don't like you because you're this, why, and that, but that's your personal choice. It's my personal choice to not like that.
You also have a moving target.
Yeah, like my standard moves.
I'm gonna let this person slide when it comes to the drug abuse, but I'm gonna, because of my familial relationship with them.
Like that's
I'm gonna be harsh on everybody else.
Which is so difficult because sometimes we either do one of two things when it comes to people that we're really close with. We either come down harder on people that we're closer to, or we come down softer than we would a regular person on the street. And you can't do either of those.
You have to be objective.
You have to be objective.
You have to be, even though I hate the word, you have to be fair.
Right. So like with my son, when it comes to karate, right? Because I teach him karate. He comes to class all the time. So today in class I call it the Warrior Challenge. It's a set of 4 different exercises that all of the kids have to do until there's one kid left doing it the right way, right? The vast majority of time, my son gives up. He just gives up. It frustrates me and it disappoints me that he just gives up because I know he's really strong, but that's just what he does, right? But I don't go when he gives up. I don't scorn him any harder in class because he's my son compared to another kid who gives up, nor do I come down on him softer because he's my son. Today, he won 3 out of the 4 exercises. I didn't congratulate him more than anybody else given their history of quitting as much as he has, who had completed it. I gave him extra congratulations than I would anybody who just won, but not because he was my son, but because given his proclivity to giving up, any student who has a proclivity to giving up, if they go beyond that and accomplish so much, you give them extra goods, right? So we have to make sure that when we're doing this, we're doing it, I hate it. So in our house, it's the F word. Fair.
Yeah.
Right? I despise that word because it's so relative. It's fair. It's fair. Fair to what? I really do hate that word. It was just. He got just congratulations today. But that's what we have to do with each other. I don't come down harder on you than I would anybody else. You don't come down harder on me than anybody else. What we can do, and this is the big difference that a lot of people forget, because I expect more out of people that I know better, I don't come down on them harder, but there's a greater weight to the condemnation of behavior. So if you don't know anybody, again, like, if I knew somebody who, like, if you were abusing drugs, which you're not, but if you were...
Oh, I'm not? Oh, thank God. I'm sorry, all the drugs made me forget.
But if you were abusing drugs, I would come down really hard on you. Aside from the fact that you're a father and a husband, I know the character of your person. and I know your entire history because we're not brothers, but we have the same parents, and we lived in the same house, but it wasn't our house because we're not brothers. I know what your history is like, so it would be such a divergence from the character that you portray. But if I had never met you and I found out that you had an addiction to drugs, I have no idea what your life has been like. I have no idea. So I have to withhold my judgment until I get a better picture. Now, sometimes you don't have to withhold judgment. Like if I see you shoot somebody, I don't have to be like, well, maybe
that person deserved it.
Maybe they deserved it. Maybe they were uppity. Maybe you just had a bad day, right? Like there are some sins that we can immediately call out. Other sins we need to withhold judgment until there's more information, which just makes it more intelligent and more just.
Which perfect segue. This is what the Catechism says in chapter.
Which is great because I've never read the Catechism.
Paragraph 2477. Respect for the reputation of persons forbids every attitude and word likely to cause them unjust injury. He becomes guilty first of rash judgment, who even tacitly assumes as true without sufficient foundation the moral fault of a neighbor. So, hearsay. Of detraction, who without objectively valid reason discloses another's faults and failings to persons who did not know them, so spreading rumors.
Mm-hmm.
And then
calumny.
Of calumny, who by remarks contrary to the truth harms the reputation of others and gives occasion for false judgments concerning them. So, gossip and lies.
And this is what I love about judgment, or not judgment, gossip.
So you can judge that person based on their actions, but you're not going to go spread more rumors or lies about that person.
Yeah, like when it comes to gossip, I can't remember who it was. I want to say it's Dr. Marshall, but I don't quite know. But it was, gossip is when you tell somebody something that they don't have a right to know. So it's not even that you're telling them something that could be, devious, or
something that's a false, but like
it could be truthful.
Like is it that person's business whether or not say you're abusing drugs? Is it anybody's business?
I used to abuse drugs. And
is it
you and
anybody's business who I work with?
Is it any of their you and I are in the checkout line at Rayleigh's, and you're buying a beer, and I'm like, he used to do heroin. You never did heroin, but he used to do heroin. And if you had done heroin, they'd be like looking at you like, what? Be like, I just want to let you know. Like, that's gossip. Mm-hmm. That person had no right to know that thing about you. So we have to be, one, proportional. We have to, speak exactly what we're supposed to speak when we're supposed to speak it in a way that gets the point across. But we're not out to air everybody's dirty laundry everywhere. It's disgusting. And that's
which is why the gospel passage first says, if you have a grievance against your brother, you go to him first, in private. Then you bring a witness along if they don't, and then as a last resort, you take it up. It's a thing that Ben Shapiro always talks about. You try to take care of matters in the family. First and foremost within your individual family unit. Then you bring it to the family at large. Then you bring it to the religious community, which you should be a part of. Uh-huh. Then you take it to the state, or the county, then the state, then the federal government. You work up the chain of command.
Yeah, you don't just go...
Same thing with judgment and, when necessary, just condemnation of that person. You take it in the... You don't run out in the streets tearing your garments and going, this person is wrong!
Trump is my king!
Yeah.
Hashtag Trump 2020.
Grab him by the Trump.
It's gold-plated.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see with the impeachments whether or not there is a Trump 2020.
Man, it's so good. I love it. Such judgments by everybody. Trump shouldn't judge anybody, but we're going to judge the shit out of you. So judging isn't wrong. Judging the state of somebody's soul is wrong.
Judging can be wrong if you're going about it based on ignorance or hearsay of other people. So it goes back to the somebody else's sin opening you up to a state of sin. Somebody sins by telling you gossip or telling you a rumor. Well, I saw him stick the needle in his arm. You don't know that for sure, but now you are going to treat that person differently without knowing whether or not that's true. And you're now sinning.
And so we talked about this again before the podcast. Part of the reason that we don't judge the state of a soul is, one, we have no knowledge of it. Right? Like, I have absolutely no idea. But we don't do it while the person is still alive. Like, you're going to hell. I can say that the actions that you're doing lead you to hell, but I can't say that no matter what, you're going to hell, because it demotivates people to getting right with God.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you were to say that...
Well, if I'm going there anyway...
Why even try, right? Like if you mess up one time, and I say no matter what you do for the rest of your life, there is no chance of you being saved ever, then why even try? It makes no sense if it's just one time screw up and your whole life is ruined forever, eternally. Why even try? Mm-hmm. And what you do is you then lead people to, again, because sin begets more sin, mm-hmm. if there's no hope, why even try to not sin? Because you're already you already have a proclivity to sin.
And I think because going off of the Catechism passage that I just quoted, you become an accessory to somebody else's sin by advisement. And I think advisement can come in two ways. It could come from telling somebody to actively engage in that, or you are advising them in a manner that will then push them further into that sin. And this is that case. Yeah. Well, you're going to hell, nothing can save you. You're advising them to then just continue on living a life of debauchery. Because there's no redemption.
Saving, yeah. And then, like, let's go back 3 episodes. The non-judgmentalism of the church when Joe Biden got denied the Eucharist. That priest made a judgment call. Mm-hmm. Not a judgment call in as much as what they're going to do, but a judgment of the state of Joe Biden in relation to the standards of the church. And he was found to be wanting.
Mm-hmm. And I think there is a little bit of a difference as well when it comes to a private versus a public state of sin.
Yes.
Because Joe Biden is openly,
an obstinate public sinner.
Publicly sinning. So the priest, in good faith, is able to say, this is a person in a state of mortal sin, and as a result, this is the consequence to his actions. Mm-hmm. Which is withholding the Eucharist.
I don't think it's so much as it is a consequence, but I don't want to say, because you do this, I'm going to do this to you. I think what it is because you've done this, you've removed yourself from being able to do this.
Because you are doing this, I am concerned of engaging in a behavior which is going to lead you farther away from Christ.
And as a brother who is concerned on the salvation of all souls, mm-hmm. I won't participate in somebody else's damnation.
Yeah, because I think consequence is another one of those words that everybody, a consequence. Consequences are always negative. No, a consequence is an externality.
Yes.
There are good consequences and there are bad consequences.
Yeah, okay, yes. Yeah, exactly. Like, the consequence of you doing your chores and getting good grades is you get cool stuff. The consequence of you not cleaning your room, not doing your chores, and having bad grades
is a fist in your chest.
Is bad, right? I remember when I went to college that one semester, I was in psychology, and there are 4 forms of not
reinforcement.
Of reinforcement, right? There's positive punishment, negative punishment, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Mm-hmm. Positive punishment is I give you a bad. I give you extra chores, I give you push-ups, I give you a scolding. A negative one is you don't get TV. I'm taking something away mm-hmm. that will make you not happy. I'll take away, you don't get dessert, or you don't get to stay up late. So those are on like the punishment side of consequences.
You don't get to not have my fist in your chest.
Yeah, you don't get to not get your butt beat. Then you have positive reinforcement. Mm-hmm. I'm giving you a good. You get an extra half hour of TV, or you get an extra hour outside playing, or you get a BB gun, or like any of those things. And then a negative reinforcement is I'm taking away a bad. You no longer don't get dessert. Or I remove a bad state. Like, your curfew is no longer 9, now it's 10. Mm-hmm. I'm taking away a barrier, right? Yeah. But those are all consequences. They're not all bad. Some of them are bad, some of them are good.
Yeah.
But you're very right in your judgment of my unwillingness to say consequence. Some consequences are meddled out, and some are brought upon ourselves, right? Like, the consequence of me not studying is a bad grade. That's a consequence that I brought upon myself, right? Now, if I was to commit a crime and then a judge was to hand out a punishment, that's a consequence. But there's two different ways that it happens. One of them, I brought it upon myself by not doing something, and what was due to me came to me. And then I committed a crime, and a judge gives me something, right? Like, there's two different ways that we can have these consequences, and so often, like I just did, just out of habit, which is unfortunate that I did it, is we're so...
It doesn't sound.
We're so sensitive.
Nice. It doesn't sound nice to hear the word consequence, because so often we hear consequence in the negative connotation.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, judge each other.
Yeah,
judge them.
Judge them, because how else are you going to call your brother out when they need to?
And how like, again, this is something like, maybe you're the only person who will ever be able to judge that behavior. Maybe it's the only time this person has ever done it in public. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the only time they've ever done it in somebody else. Maybe it's the only time that they ever were talked about it. And if you don't take that opportunity to rightly, fraternally correct a brother through a judgment, they might continue going on and committing that sin forever.
And now, have you opened up yourself to a state of sin because you were not, you had the chance to advise that person, or to speak out, or to try to prevent that person from engaging in sin, and you become an accessory to it because you didn't?
Yeah, it's horrible.
Which again, I mean, I've said it on the podcast before. I think it's one of the things that we all need to really guard ourselves against with this live and let live mentality. You need to guard yourself against becoming an accessory to somebody else's sin.
Which is why Joe Biden got denied communion by that priest, because the priest was worried not only about Joe Biden's soul, but his own. Because there were consequences to both of them had what almost happened had it occurred.
And I hope the consequence of that is Joe Biden is discerning what the truth, that the church is true.
Yeah.
And that hopefully he comes back, and, God willing, we welcome him back.
The last one that I want to talk about real quick, because we've got a little bit of time. When you say somebody, when you correct somebody who claims to be a Catholic, and you tell them that they're not, when we do it, because I think it is important, I really do think it's equally important to judge behavior and to judge somebody who claims a title that they actually don't have.
Yeah.
Like, when you... So let's start real quick, because I want to touch on this for just a couple minutes. When somebody says they're a practicing Catholic, what does that actually mean? Not what they think it means, but what does saying I'm a practicing Catholic actually mean?
That's a really big question. I mean,
I hate words and words. I think so for me, when somebody says that they're a practicing Catholic, it means that they acknowledge, accept, endorse, and support, and live out all of the Catholic teachings.
Mm-hmm. That'd be a good definition.
And that's what it means to be a practicing Catholic. Now, I can be a practicing Catholic who's also a sinner. But the difference is I have to acknowledge that what I've done is not inherently part of living a Catholic life, but by acknowledging that, I'm still living out a Catholic life because I'm acknowledging my faults and my failures.
And hopefully you're going to seek confession.
Through my my most grievous fault, right? We talk about our own, I can't remember what it says, but we can acknowledge that we're not living up to the perfect standard. The sinner is obviously Christ, right? But you can still fall short. But if you acknowledge that you've fallen short, you at least acknowledge that there's a standard and that you're trying. And that's what I think being a practicing quote-unquote Catholic is. But if you're somebody who says that they're a practicing Catholic, but you make no attempt to square your temporal actions with this religious ideology, then you can't actually make the claim. And you should get called out for it. Because what we've done is we've allowed this term of I'm a practicing Catholic to mean nothing.
Yeah.
I went to the dentist probably like 6 months ago, and he made a joke about I can't remember what it was, but it was something about the number of kids that I have, and he was like, "Oh, yeah,
have you figured it out by now?"
No, it was something like, "Oh, wow, it's a lot of kids, right?" And it was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Well, so are you guys done?" And it was like, "No, we're gonna have, my wife's probably not gonna listen to this. We're gonna have 30, maybe 40. I don't know. We're gonna have a lot of kids, right?" And he was like shocked. He was like, "Wow!" And I didn't actually say 30 or 40. I think I said like 6 or 7. He was like, "Wow!" And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm a Catholic." He goes, "Yeah, so am I, but I got snipped."
So you're not a Catholic.
And so, but to me, and it was like it was so clear that the term Catholic no longer holds any weight or meaning, because so many people have allowed that term to be misused by everybody.
Yeah.
I'm a good person. Didn't you just rape her? Yeah, but that was I judged it as a good move for me.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, no, you're not a good person. You're a giant piece of crap.
But I think we do. I mean, going back to the judging, you have to be able to determine whether or not, when somebody labels themselves, there is a standard to which you need to adhere for that label to be accurate. I mean, it's
I'm a woman. It is entirely relativistic.
Yes.
And unbelievably subjective.
Do you have the potential to bear children?
No.
You're not a woman. But even women who are infertile, by their very biology, have the potential for life inside of them.
Yes.
They're a woman.
Yeah. As a Catholic,
and I'm honestly gonna. I think that's probably going to be, a lot of people are going to take that more offensive than
anything else we've said today.
Exactly, because they go back to, well, what about men who are infertile? Well, they're still men because they still have the potential. Again, St. Thomas talks about it in the Summa. There is the potential versus the actual. And even people who are infertile biologically from having children, they are still man and woman because of their biology.
Yes. And
a great video is Charlie Kirk debating the libertarian socialist, and he's like, "So you don't believe in capitalism? No. You don't believe in private property? No. Then stop calling yourself a libertarian.
Yeah, exactly.
You're anything but a libertarian."
But I think
there are certain standards that anybody, when they label themselves, need to meet, and other people need to be able to judge that and then call them out appropriately with compassion. You're not that.
Yeah, you're not that. And I think
stop lying. Why are you lying?
We need to bring back the meaning of the term Catholic. Mm-hmm. It's an identity.
Are you saying that we need to return to tradition?
Whoop whoop. Whoop whoop. But really, we need to, I'm taking it back. I'm bringing it back. We need to bring back the meaning of the word Catholic by judging behavior, supporting good behavior and shaming bad behavior. Because ultimately, when we go through the world and people say, "Well, I'm a Catholic," that means nothing in a world where being Catholic means anything and everything you want.
Yep.
My dentist believes that being Catholic means that you can have a vasectomy and that you can contracept and still be a Catholic. But it's one of those things where, being a Catholic is not... It's not a birthright. It's not a state of being. You have to do things to be a Catholic. You don't have to do anything to be white or a man. Your existence is...
I choose every day to be white and a man. # Rachel Dolezal.
But by your very existence, you're a white male. But
you forgot cisgendered.
Cisgendered.
That's very
male.
important to my identity.
But I think that's a daily decision that you make. It's not the same for being Catholic, because being Catholic is something that supersedes all of these unchanging... You cannot change the fact that you're white, even though if you get a tan. You can't change the fact that you can't change your chromosomes. They're just what they are, and they will forever be that. But your belonging to the quote-unquote Catholic identity. That's not something that is something that you can claim and never lose.
And I think because it is a choice and because it is the judgment that I have made, I think it's the most important one. I'm not a white male Catholic. I am Catholic. I also happen to be white and male.
And we talked about this in one of our last episodes when we talked about diversity.
Yeah.
Like, you're a Catholic first, but you wake up and make a conscious decision to be a Catholic every day.
Mm-hmm. So it's obviously more important because it's something I actively strive for.
Yeah, and you are working towards with fear and trembling every moment of every day.
Yeah.
I think we'll end there. That was
Beautiful. Amen, Brother God.
Amen. Brother Christ.
All right.
Father God. Holy spooky ghost.
But not Blessed Mother.
Don't you bring idol worship in here. We've renamed her the Blessed Pachamama.
Ooh. Yucky. All right.
Yeah, yucky.
Oh, man. Idol worship in the Vatican. All right. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Sancte Michael Arcangele, defende nos in prelio. Contra nequitiam et insidious diaboli esto praesidium. Imperatili Deus supplices deprecamur. Tuque princeps militiae celestis. Satanam aliosque spiritus malignos. Qui ad perditionem animarum pervegantur in mundo. Divine virtute in infernum detrude. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Finally learned it.
You said molest in there. I almost giggled. Molest.
I love that word, Prince of the Heavenly Host, or that phrase, Prince of the Heavenly Host, Princeps Militiae Celestis.
Oh, it's not molesties.
It's not molest. It's Militiae Celestis.
Molesties.
Molesties.
That's Teddy McCarrick's version.
Sorry, yeah, different.
I was way off. All right, www.catholicguardians.com. Click the Be Manly tab. Join the Be Manly group. Click the CG shop. I think it's Shop CG or CG Shop. It's something like that. But down below, we've got swag gear. It's T-shirts. It is stickers, mugs.
Coffee mugs, phone cases.
The kit and caboodle. We're coming out in the next couple of weeks. We are going to have a... actually, it's not going to be the next couple of weeks. It's going to be this Monday. We're going to come out with a super sale. What? On all of our rosaries. We're going to have a big...
Just in time for the holiday season.
Big thing for that. And we have a brand new rosary design coming out.
Beautiful, too.
By the time this podcast gets released on Monday.
Everybody else liked the other design. I was the only one that liked the...
I know.
The one. Yeah, everybody else liked the other.
Because you were wrong. I'm making a judgment.
Yeah,
I judged your taste is wrong. Because it's all about the collective, right? Obviously, like this is a democracy. Clearly, you're wrong.
But where is the compromise?
We compromised with you being wrong. We all compromised together. Some of us wanted to kill you.
That's the tyranny of the majority.
So we've got a brand new rosary design coming out. It's probably second to the Memento Mori rosary. It's probably my next favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Blood of Christ rosary is pretty cool. The Roman, is really cool, but this one is just like, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
I really like it. So that'll be out on Monday. So we're gonna have a big sale on that. So check back on our website. There'll be a link on the website that gives you the coupon code for the discount for Christmas. I lost my train of thought.
That's the website. Instagram,
oh, yeah.
Catholic_Guardians. YouTube and Facebook is just Catholic Guardians. While you're watching us on YouTube, hit the bell, click subscribe.
So that way you get notified every time we come out with one of these new videos.
One of these new woman-hating, judgmental videos.
Cisgendered, racist. Please, if you're on Apple, go give us a 5 or 4 or 3-star rating. Click review. Give us a review. We really appreciate it. The more reviews and ratings that we get, the higher we're actually rated. The more people get to hear this cool podcast. Share it You can share this material. Take it. There's a little box with an arrow. Share that. Share this video. Share any of the videos. Share the podcast.
Yep.
Send it to people who need to hear it.
We
with judgmental text messages.
As of right now, we have 24 ratings, 1 star, 23 5-star, and we have 6 written reviews. And
7.
Is it 7?
It's 7.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I can't count. 7 written reviews. So
24/7.
So, so for every one of you that has written a review, thank you very, very much from the bottom of our hearts, and all of you.
Been supportive.
They have been incredibly supportive, and you know this ministry means a lot to us, and so to see that it means a lot to other people, you know, we just really hope that we can continue to share this mystery and the truth. Honestly,
we have made gigantic family decisions around the perpetuating of this podcast and this ministry. So we're in it for the long haul, and we hope that everybody else is too.
Yeah. So, but apart from Apple, we're also on Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you consume
any
your
major
podcast.
any major podcast platform. Yeah. That's
and
it.
then finally, info@catholicguardians.com.
Email us. We're doing so we put out a big post a couple days ago on Instagram. We're gonna do some big some big interviews. So we've been reaching out to some big name people. So we're going to try to schedule some of these big interviews to get those done, which will be really cool because obviously, as cool as we are, there are some big influential people in the Catholic realm of the internet
that are a lot cooler than we are.
I don't know about that. They're just a lot more popular, and it's all about popularity.
Damn it, I forgot.
You did.
It's all those drugs.
It's the heroin. He does heroin. So look forward to some interviews that are coming down the pipe in the next couple months. We have a retreat getting put together. It'll probably be towards summer 2020. It'll be a handful of days. It'll be like 3 or 4 days. And we're probably only going to open it up, only because this will be our first, we're probably only going to open it up to about 10 guys. And it'll be men only, obviously. So look forward to summer 2020. We're going to have a big retreat. It's not big. It'll be big for everybody that goes.
Yeah.
It'll be really cool. That's about it. I think that's all that we've got coming down the pipe.
I think that's all the plugs that we need to do, apart from pray the rosary daily. If you don't pray the rosary daily, you're wrong.
You're wrong. Pray it over your family. Pray it with your family. And pray for your family.
And be manly. What else is there?
Being a
real Riley.
A limp-wristed Riley. That's it.
That's it. God bless.
Have a good night.